This week on Full Credit to the Noise, brought to you by Parcel Protect. Liam Lawson skating on thin ice. Is Scott McLaughlin heading to the Octagon? And is Oscar Piastri a Chinese spy? Welcome to Full Credit to the Noise. Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Full Credit to the Noise. You can find this podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at FCTTN Podcast. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, and Facebook at former_legend. You can find that bloke across from me on Twitter at AVL_motorsport. He's on Instagram at AVL.motorsport. He's the man who this week personally set fire to 30 Teslas. He's offered up his tinny in the fresh hunt for MH370, and tonight he's wearing a Bunnings straw hat. Welcome to Speed Cafe's Andrew Van Leeuwen.
Thank you, Former. I can assure you those Teslas were on fire before I came along. That was nothing to do with me at all.
Why do you hate him, mate? Why do you hate Elon?
I don't hate anyone.
If it's any consolation, you know Robinson Crusoe, brother.
I have no great interest in electric cars, but no great hatred of them either. So
yeah, I'm a BYD man these days.
There you go.
Let's kick the week off with, well, I don't usually like to do this on a show that's a little bit lighthearted, but Varlater Eddie Jordan, mate, passed away this week, age 76, former Formula One team owner. He actually was a driver at one stage, and then he was a commentator in the latter part of his life. He died to aggressive prostate cancer, which is extremely sad. It was only a few weeks ago when you got me into the ROC that I spoke to David Coulthard about Eddie, because I didn't realise just how serious things had gotten. And I just said, "Oh, how's Eddie going?" And he just looked at me and I was like, "Oh, shit, I've asked the wrong question here." So can I just say, Valet to Eddie, he was an absolute giant of a personality in motorsport, and it's such a shame that we lose greats like that. But I tell you what, for a bloke that wanted to live his life to the fullest, I don't think many would get past him.
No, he just leaves this really fun, likable legacy. You know, he was an amazing motor racing person, an incredible character, and yeah, I mean, I love those Jordan cars of the late 1990s and early 2000s. Like I always have a soft spot for a yellow race car, and they really were. You know, at the time when my love of Formula One was really developing, they were just fantastic. Even that 2000 season where that car was like pretty good, and it was just such a fun team to support if you wanted to break away from the might of Ferrari and McLaren. It was they were just such a great team. So Eddie really just brought so much to Formula One and motorsport in general. So yeah, incredibly sad news. Just
quietly too, the 7-Up.
Yeah, I mean one of the most beautiful F1 cars of all time,
stunning,
if not the most beautiful F1 car of all time.
What happened on the weekend, buddy? Well, Trans Am's at Tasmania highlighted or lowlighted, depending on how you look at it, by a 12-car all-inner. Trophy series at the strip by the tip, which was highlighted or lowlighted by just lots of rain and yellow flags and safety cars.
Yep.
And Rally Canberra, didn't see a lot of it. What did you get to have a look at?
I actually watched a fair bit. I was on F1 Live Updates duty for the weekend, so I was kind of spending a fair bit of time on the couch at the computer.
Stefan's finally got past you, eh?
He's
outracking you now.
And
we knew it was coming.
It was so there was actually just heaps of racing on. You know, by the time you had F1 and F1 Academy with a couple of Aussies in that in China, and then Tassie SMP, like there was just heaps going on, and there was a fair bit of entertaining stuff to watch. So it was actually kind of a great weekend to be a car racing fan.
Yeah, I reckon it was too. Well, let's go to the shift cut because there's a little bit going on, especially in the last, day and a half. So let's do this.
4, 3, 1.
Let's start with this story. It came out last week that Supercars has inked a 3-year extension to its Simmons Plains tenure as part of a $6 million funding boost from the Tasmanian government. The 3-year period starts with the 2025 event, scheduled for May 9 to 11 this year, and runs through until 2027 before a street race in Hobart. Did you say that or did I?
A street race in Hobart? Is that what's going to happen?
Oh, I'd like that to happen. I'd be down there, I tell you.
It would be nice, and Hobart is actually a beautiful city, and it would be the sort of place that would really get behind it. At the same time, like I like these kind of stories, you know, even about the extension for Simmons Plains, because you need these little heartland events as well. You know, like they're just so
I
important to the sport. And I say that somewhat selfishly because I do love my yearly trip to Launceston because, yeah, Tassie's just great. It's actually just a fantastic place. The food's epic. Launceston's beautiful. The weather is horrendous, but whatever, it doesn't matter. That little track's kind of charming. So, yeah, I do like that. But a street race at Hobart, I also would not be against that because, again, I think it's the sort of place. And I think we spoke about this around the Tassie round last year. They went and did a bit of a roadshow thing in Hobart just before that round, the Launceston round last year, and the reception was really good. And you sort of go, yeah, that is the sort of place that a big event like that would really work.
Yep, I agree. I think it'd be fantastic. Although you'd have to position at the right time of the year after a long time attendee of Canberra. Oh, jeez.
Yep. Yeah, true.
She's. All right, now speaking to Simmons Plains, Todd Hazelwood started his Trans Am title defence in style, winning the Tasmanian round from Benny Grice and Mark Bailey. But the weekend was marred, as I said earlier, by a 12-car pile-up down the front straight, which is reminiscent of the Supercars All-Inner from 2017. Good racing from what I did see.
Yeah.
What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was obviously
Good
quite interrupted by that issue and a bunch of other issues. So there was a fair bit of interruption to the racing itself. But yeah, incredible field, plenty of cars. Particularly when it is an expensive endeavour to go racing in Tasmania. So the fact that they could get such a huge field is a real positive for that category. It is a category that's really it's still on the way up, despite all the issues with the Speed Series and kind of it not having the sort of very safe, consistent home that it had last year. So, yeah, the next round is at Bathurst for the 6 hour. That's a joint round with TA2, so they're talking like 40-plus cars for that one, which will be absolutely huge. And I'm guessing probably going to see a few safety cars during that as well. But, yeah, that crash, I think that crash could have gone a lot worse, really, if you think about how bad the Supercars one was. It actually, in terms of cars being absolutely destroyed, it wasn't too bad. But Benny Grice's reaction to it was pretty good. He was pretty upfront on the telly about two guys that should know better, talking about Jimmy Golding and Nash Morris coming together and all that sort of stuff. He's an entertaining bloke, is Benny.
I'm glad you mentioned the 6 hour because I understand, as you said, possibly 42 cars will be on the grid there, or if you combine that with the TCR's 44. Now let's talk about F1 in China and sprint qualifying. Oscar was third, Jack Doohan was 16th, Liam Lawson was last. Then in the sprint race, Oscar ran second, Lawson ran 14th, Doohan was last. It was won by Lewis Hamilton. It was his first ever sprint race win. It was also Ferrari's first sprint race win. Then we went to qualifying for the Grand Prix. Oscar took pole, Doohan 18th, Lawson last. And then in the Grand Prix race itself, Piastri dominated the race and the McLaren won 2. The hall monitor, George Russell, ran 3rd. Doohan finished 16th, Lawson 15th. But then both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc were disqualified for 2 separate technical infringements. Leclerc's car was found to be 1 kilo under the 800 kilogram minimum. In Hamilton's case, it was the thickness of the plank yet again under his car. And Pierre Gasly was also excluded from the Chinese Grand Prix after his Alpine was also found to be underweight, which pushed a bunch of blokes up, including Doohan and Lawson. Didn't get either of them into the points, though.
No. Yeah, there's a fair bit to unpack out of the weekend. It was a pretty interesting weekend. You kind of saw early on, like, that McLaren is just so fast, but you can still sort of just see the small flaws in both Lando and Oscar, to be honest. Like in that early part of the weekend, like they should have been on pole for the sprint, but they weren't. And then you actually see like the immense, just consistent, long-lasting quality of your Lewis Hamiltons and your Max Verstappens, who just go out there and get everything that they kind of have available to them. And in Max's case, a lot more. Like he is actually overperforming the car. And you sort of saw that in the sprint race. You could see in the sprint, and obviously track position was so incredibly important. But, Lewis is still more than capable of putting together a pretty impressive race drive. Like he did win 7 world championships for a reason, and you could see that there. The weekend kind of got away from Ferrari from there as the track got better. They kind of didn't quite go with it. And obviously the weekend took an even worse turn for him by getting both drivers kicked out of that race. And that's really Ferrari doing Ferrari things because they were just miscalculations. Like Ferrari did put a statement out saying that Leclerc's issue with the weight was because they did a one-stopper and the tyre wear was higher than expected. But like, it doesn't really tally because total tyre wear should be about 1 kilo. So a little more tyre wear than expected shouldn't account for a full kilogram. So there was a miscalculation somewhere in a hugely costly one, and the same with obviously the ride height on Lewis's car, which has just worn that plank down a little bit too much. But you would still think there's some positives to come out of the weekend for those guys, even if, like I say, the weekend got away from them a little bit. And then, like I say, it was all a bit messy on Friday for the McLaren drivers, but once we got into qualifying proper in the race itself, like Oscar Piastri, that was just absolutely fantastic. And that's where you do really see that he probably still lacks the absolute outright speed of Lando, but you just know that once he does get into a position, he's not going to make the mistakes. And you just can't quite say that about Lando. It always feels like a mistake can still come from him, whether it's on a quali lap, whether it's running wide, whether it's literally just throwing the car off the track on the first lap of the sprint race. Once Oscar gets into that position, he can just execute so consistently. And that was by far his most impressive win as a Grand Prix driver, his first ever pole. But yeah, the way he controlled that race, he'll take a lot of confidence from that. That's where you go, okay, this guy can fight for the title, because I think that McLaren's just going to be too fast. I think it is going to be between those two in terms of who's going to win the championship this year. I think that we're going to see the weekends where Lewis did what he did in that sprint race and wins. We're going to see, I think the Mercedes is kind of a car that's almost there or thereabouts as well. It's kind of just not rapidly quick, but it's pretty consistent. So we're going to see George have his time in the sun at some point. Max is going to do Max things because that's just what Max does, and he's going to be a factor, but it's really hard to not sort of think, geez, that McLaren is incredibly fast, and the World Championship is really going to be down between those two guys. And I think that was important for Oscar to sort of draw that line in the sand and say, right, I can put together the quali lap that'll put me on pole, and once I'm there, I can drive a flawless race and control it and take all of the 25 points and make it look really easy. And that means he can fight for the championship, which is pretty cool.
What do you make of the Chinese track?
I don't mind it. Like, I think out of all those Tilky Drome sort of circuits, it's one of the it's one of the better ones out of all those Tilky Drome circuits. That surface seems to kind of probably take its toll on the racing a little bit. Like it was a track position race, it was. But I don't mind. I think it certainly has a lot more character than most of the Tilky Dromes. It's certainly one of my favourite of that style of circuit, which I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah, I agree, mate. For some reason, I feel like that track should create better racing than probably what we do see, which is a little bit weird. But yeah, and then I was listening to another podcast talking about it today, saying that perhaps they just take the wrong tyres there, because they were of the same opinion that the track deserves to have better racing on it. So
yeah, it's just like I say, I think it was just on the weekend. It was if you had the track position at the front and you had anywhere near enough car speed, you could really dictate terms to everyone behind you, and that's what we saw in both of those two races.
Let's talk about probably the biggest story in Formula One at the moment, and that's former honorary Australian Liam Lawson, who's under immense pressure to keep his Red Bull seat after a number of absolute dismal performances from the first two rounds, with Yuki Tsunoda adding fuel to the fire, admitting he's 100% ready to race for Red Bull at his home race in Japan in a fortnight. Look, Liam Lawson didn't forget how to drive over summer. We pretty much know that. Saying that, we were all pretty harsh, me included, on the bloke he replaced, Perez, this time last year, saying, Jesus, he's just fallen off the earth. It's clearly a car that's just centered around the way Max likes a car set up. And then I don't know what they're going to do, because clearly it's very, very tough, has huge idiosyncrasies that make it almost impossible for anyone else if I'm outside looking in.
I mean, they've pretty much been struggling with this issue since Daniel Ricciardo left Red Bull Racing the first time. Like, they just cannot find someone who can look even remotely impressive in that second car. Like, it is just so difficult. So this is just the latest case of that. And, yeah, the reality is that was a really tough weekend for Liam Lawson, and the pressure is on. There is some talk out there that Yuki could be in the seat for Japan, although it does seem like they will stick with Liam for a little bit longer. And so they absolutely should, because it's an incredibly tough position to put someone in. And yes, he is not performing. I think we all understand that. But they've put him in this position. They've put him in what everyone knows is the toughest seat in the category, and you've got to give the guy a bit more time. Like you just need to do that. And I think Max Verstappen's comments were very interesting because he said that the Red Bull is just a really difficult car to drive, and that he would expect Liam to be faster if he jumped in the Racing Bull car. So and based on some of the speed we've seen from Yuki and Isaac over the weekend, I think that does really make sense. So I think Liam's just in a really tough spot. The entire point of him being brought into the team was to be more competitive than Sergio had been, and realistically, he's less competitive right now. So that has got to change, and it's got to change fast, or he will be out of a drive. But I think the team have to be realistic about what they expect from him, given the package that they've given him. And, they understand better than anyone what Max does and how he can outperform a car. And I think we saw that on the weekend. And it's just a difficult situation for Liam to be in. And when you're trying to get the best out of a knife edge car like that, having your confidence in the toilet doesn't help. Like, that makes it just so much harder again. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens between now and Japan, and then what happens not long after Japan. Liam raced in Super Formula. I think they'll give him Japan because that should be a track where he can really go out there and do a good job at. Obviously, it's an important race for Yuki as well as his home race, but I think the team's got to think beyond that. They got to work out how they solve this second driver issue. They gave the seat to Liam. They obviously think that he's better suited to it than Yuki because they've got all the data on Yuki. They've got years of looking at him. He could have gone into that seat, and they chose Liam. And I think they really just need to back him for now and just see what happens and let the sample size grow. So at least if you do have to do something drastic and make a change there, you've got a bit better suite of data to be working in and making that decision on.
How happy would Checo be right now?
Yeah.
Happier than a dog with two dicks. He would be absolutely loving life.
If I was Liam, I wouldn't be looking at any comment sections on any Mexican F1 sites or anything like that, to be perfectly honest.
Well, also, there's a rumour that blew out today, and I don't believe it, but it's worth the discussion, is that Colapinto would be sat in the seat. I wouldn't see it, but it can actually come from a decent site that has been right before.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much in that right now. You never know what can sort of happen, but I think if they were going to make a change, particularly between now and Japan, it'd be Yuki that would go in the seat. He is already the reserve driver. Like, that is the change that surely would be made if there was a change. But I hope there's not one before Japan, because I think Liam deserves a bit longer to try and get a result.
So many questions if there is a change. What happens if? What happens if Yuki goes there and he goes to 20th and Lawson gets up in the top 10? Do we then just throw our hands in the air and say, yeah, we really do have a problem with that second car?
Yeah.
Like, it's just it's an interesting time, but to watch this space at the moment. Christian Horner and Zach Brown have thrown their support behind F1 returning to V10 power in the future. It comes after rumours blew around in the lead up to China that Liberty Media have broached teams about ditching the new engine regulations that come into effect next year and return to V10s in 2028. The use of sustainable fuels in a normally aspirated engine offers a number of key benefits, while from a fan's perspective, it will ramp up the visceral experience after more than a decade of droning hybrid power. Are you all in?
This is an interesting one, and I think my opinion is swayed slightly from having just been on the ground at an F1 event for 3 days, like a week ago, because I went to V10 era Grand Prix, right? I went to V8 era Grand Prix, and those cars sounded incredible, like both of them. I'll never forget the first time I heard a V10 Grand Prix car, how the noise actually ripped through your chest. It was just absolutely incredible, but it's also exhausting. Like, you need earplugs for F1 sessions. You can't talk to people.
Should.
You can't talk to people during a session. Like, Grand Prix have become these socialite events, and the current engines are way more social than the old engines. Like, they do make a day at a Grand Prix infinitely more enjoyable, if I'm honest, than it used to be. Because it used to be 3 days of it was hard.
I didn't see this angle on
my
bingo
work,
card.
and it's just fun. Like I say, if it wasn't for the fact that Stefan and I were actually walking around during practice on the Friday at the Grand Prix, going, geez, it is much nicer. Like, it is actually a much nicer experience than the old cars, which if you've been outside for 20 minutes, it's easy for us because we get to go into a soundproof media center and kind of it takes the edge off it. But I've sat there in the stands with those motors. So look, there's pluses and minuses to it. I still think it's probably a fairly long shot because technology, get it like squeezing technology back into the toothpaste tube doesn't tend to happen. Like once you go down a, it's very hard to sort of walk back technological advancements. But it's certainly an interesting discussion point. And I think, for the 23, the 24 races, when you watch it on TV, it'd be so much better with those screaming cars because they are amazing. But I think that, like I say, that's just something that was on my mind because I was having that exact conversation at the Grand Prix about the fact that these things are much easier on the eardrums because those old cars were, if you've never actually heard them, like they were so incredibly loud.
I was speaking to noted Formula One pundit Mick Malloy a little while back, and we were talking about, he said, what happened to the engines, Former? What happened to the ones that screamed? He said, I don't like these. He said, I used to pack packets and packets of ear plugs into my backpack to go to the races. And he said, I could hear them across the other side of Melbourne. He said, now you wouldn't even know they're on. And he said, part of that was part of the thing that used to get me through the gates. And he's become a bit of an attendee, at least at Albert Park. So I think normal day pundits, and I know you were speaking for the influencers around there being one yourself, but I think for the normal punter, I think V10s would just be magnificent to hear them back again.
I think the first 10 minutes, everyone would go, this is the best thing that's ever happened. I mean, and I am actually talking about the people that are sitting in the stands. Like, they're the ones that are sitting there and have to listen to a 2-hour Grand Prix. And, once you get into the rhythm of the race, there's a car going past it, like, all the time. And it is a lot. And I think that's... Yeah, I guess it's to be careful what you wish for sort of scenario. But I think for people that haven't actually lived it, like it's a lot. It's a lot to sit there and take for 2 hours at a time. There's no doubt about that. But if I had to vote on it right now, I'd still vote for V10s to come back because that's my era of F1, and I do love it.
Oscar Piastri has revealed to fans that he has 1/16th Chinese heritage, tweeting that his great-great-grandfather was Chinese. He said, does that make this, the Chinese Grand Prix, my 1/16th home race? He actually also said that he would like to be called Oscar Peking Pork Piastri moving forward until we get to the next Grand Prix, and I'm sure we'll find out he's 1/16th Japanese as well.
He has pulled this gag before, I think, so I don't think it's his first go at trying to claim
He was sitting there in the press conference saying, no, it's legit. Yeah. It's legit.
Yeah,
Kiwis and Aussies overseas. We look at NASCAR. SVG, he is in a hole at the moment. He qualified 35th and finished 32nd at the Homestead Miami Speedway in the God is an American 350 in a race won by Dwayne Pipe in a Camaro. In IndyCar, Scott McLaughlin started the Thermal Club IndyCar Grand Prix from 25th after a shit show in qualifying, spinning at the last turn on his first flying lap. Things got worse from there, though, after he was spun in the formation lap by Devlin DiFrancesco. The Kiwi failed to finish after he suffered an overheating hybrid system, which left him 6 laps down initially before the car was retired on lap 53. The bloke who spun him finished 20th, 1 lap down. After the race, McLaughlin refrained from punching DiFrancesco in the head when they met in pit lane. In a scene reminiscent of Marcus Ambrose and Greg Murphy at Bathurst, the two did a lot of pointing and shouting with wee dots in their undies before walking away with not a blow being traded. The race was won by Alex Palau. Will Power ran 6th, Marcus Armstrong 7th, while the cider maker, Scott Dixon, ran 10th.
It's just amazing that the footage of Scotty and Devlin, is it Devlin? Yeah, that's
Devlin,
it, Devlin. Going at it is absolutely incredible. I've got no idea what Devlin was trying to argue. Like, he ran into a bloke on the formation lap, and he's
one of the best I've seen.
I really just don't. I cannot understand. I mean, I haven't seen his on board, but I just can't imagine.
I don't think you need to, brother. I don't think you really need to.
Argument. Like, good on him for having a go because he's trying to defend the indefendable there. But it was amazing footage, and it's amazing that IndyCar actually promotes it, and I mean that in a good way. Like, it was on their official social channels. I was going to
ask you about this. This is a strange race. Or you're going to talk about that, or are you going to talk about the event itself first?
Well, the event itself is, because this is like a non-championship thing, right? It's like just a cash race or something like that.
I thought this year it counted. I might be wrong.
Well,
we should should know that.
Yeah, we should check these things before we start recording, but that doesn't matter because I don't really care about it at all because the fight is much more interesting than anything else. But like, I just love the fact that here it is on like IndyCar is like, hey, everyone, look at this like fantastic tear up that these two blokes had.
Love it
after the race, and just the optics for the FIA are terrible because there's this, on one side we have this global crackdown on swearing because apparently nobody likes it and it's super offensive. And meanwhile, IndyCar is on its official social channels running this video of Scott McLaughlin calling another driver a dumb. Like, it's absolutely amazing. Like it's, and people are loving it. And it's sort of the same goes for like the Dutto Tommy Randall thing from Tassie last year. Like when it's something like, oh, we need to reprimand this guy because it's a really bad look that he like laid a hand on him. And these guys were fingers in chest, the whole lot, you know. And IndyCar's like, this is amazing. Get this on the internet as fast as we can because it's important that people see this cool thing that's happening, you know. And you go, oh man, we're so soft that we don't, that we feel the need to interject into the most minor, interesting thing, and over there in the States they can just let it play and make a big deal out of it because at the end of the day these are the things that do end up becoming the promo videos and all that sort of stuff. The stuff that gets the reprimands, it also gets leveraged to create interest in the category. So,
did you happen to see what I wrote in one of the chat groups about this thing?
I may have. I can't remember.
I'll just do it. We might have to take it out, but I actually find.
Oh no, I know what it is. You don't do it. Don't do it. No. All right,
we'll go to a break and we'll come back with what's more likely in the next segment of Full Credit the Noise. Back in a minute.
Full Credit to the Noise.
Winter could spell bad news for your vehicle's battery. Here are 3 maintenance tips from the battery gurus at R&J Batteries. 1. Avoid frequent short trips to keep your battery at a healthy state of charge. 2. Keep the battery terminals clean and corrosion-free. 3. Avoid running your accessories with the engine off for too long. If your battery is 3 years or older, it might be time to get it tested for free at your local R&J Batteries. R&J Batteries. Power like nothing else.
All right, welcome back to Full Credit to the Noise. I thought we'd do something a little bit different this week. We do what's more likely. I'm going to give you 2 situations. You just tell me what's more likely to occur this year, AVL. Let's start with a combination of Formula One and Supercars. Kimi Antonelli, does he win a Grand Prix this year, or does Ryan Wood win a Supercar round?
Ooh, that's a toughie. I could certainly see Ryan Wood being a Supercar race winner. Whether a round winner, I'm not sure. I reckon I'll go with Antonelli because I think that Merc will have its days in the sun this year. I think it's actually not a bad car, that thing. And he's obviously got a bit of learning to do, but Mercedes have chucked him in there for a reason. So yeah, I'll go with Antonelli winning a Grand Prix on that one.
I like that too. I'll go the same way, I reckon. What about this one? Brody misses the finals or Heimgartner makes the finals?
I don't think Brody will miss the finals.
Okay.
And I do think Heimgartner will make the finals. So is that both of them?
Pick one. You got to pick one.
All right. Well, I'll go with Heimgartner will make the finals.
Yeah, I'll go Brody. Yeah, I'll go the same. No, what's more likely? Brody misses the final. Yeah, Heimgartner makes the finals.
You've thought through this game.
Yes, I should have done that the other way around. What about this one? What's more likely, that you'd bet that a Toyota Supra makes the finals next year or a Premier Camaro makes the finals?
Supra's got to make the finals next year. Like Chaz Mostert in a Supra.
By design?
I think Supercar. Yeah, if Supercars had to do something, there would be some sort of super rule. There's got to be a Toyota in the fight towards the end of the
Special
season.
Fuel, a couple of rounds maybe, down Winton Way, just to get them through.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't mind that either. What about this one? Jack Doohan or Liam Lawson gets to Centrelink first?
Jack's kind of hanging in there, so I think there's more pressure on Liam right now.
Hasn't been horrible, has he?
I
just feel...
Yeah, he needs to tidy up his racecraft a little bit. Like, he sort of a couple of times the way he sort of straightens the steering, like in the hairpin a couple of times there, and he ended up getting penalised, Jack. But he's just sort of like obviously the Alpine was just so uncompetitive that he didn't look great, but neither did Pierre. So that kind of evens itself out.
Yep, I'm going to have Jack Doohan gets the Centrelink first, only because I think Liam will go back to the other team. So whereas I don't think Jack's got a fallback plan. Out of his own pocket, AVL attends the Chinese GP or the Saudi Arabian GP?
Actually, I was meant to cover the Chinese GP in 2018, and I actually got to the airport and I was checking in, and the lady at the counter said to me, "Is Van your middle name or part of your surname?" And I said, "My surname." And the travel agent from a previous employer had put it as my middle name. and they couldn't guarantee I'd be able to get back. Like, I wouldn't have issues with that while traveling. And if I'd been going to Monaco, I reckon I may have run the risk of being stuck in a foreign country. But
yeah, sure.
in this case, I decided to play it safe and stay home. I think it was like 3 weeks before my son was due to be born as well. But so that's my brush with the Chinese Grand Prix. But I would still say China because I love dumplings and I can probably do without the sand.
Yeah, and the stray missiles and stuff.
What one are you going for?
I think the Chinese GP, first of all, doesn't look like there's many people there, so that'd be cool. And also, apparently it's just cheap as chips to attend, ticket-wise. So
the weather looked banging on the weekend as well. It usually looks pretty miserable there, but particularly the first few days.
The air's clear, you reckon? What's more likely? We see a fourth manufacturer in supercars or an all-new streaming service for supercars?
Do you mean like a new streaming service takes over the supercars
KO.
broadcast rights?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, all right. Because they already have their own streaming thing, which is like all the onboards and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But,
no, I'm talking about KO drops off and someone else picks it up. Say your Disney's, your Amazons.
Yeah. I thought that's what you meant. I would probably go with I'll go with the fourth manufacturer because I'm pretty sure we're going to get another Fox Sports KO deal and it will run for quite a few years.
Well, you're going to break a new big story there and say I'm pretty sure we're going to get a fourth one this year.
No, but it's always possible, and the Toyota thing has opened the door. It has made that will make other manufacturers sit up and go, okay, all right, well, there's something going on here. If these guys are doing it, so I'm not saying it will happen, but I think that it is definitely not impossible that someone else comes to play at some point.
What about this one? What's more likely? We see 30 plus cars for next year's Bathurst 12 hour, or 14 cars for the first round of the Australian TCRs.
Do I have to pick one of them? I don't know. I don't really know. I mean, unless Bathurst goes Pro-Am, which I think would potentially have a pretty positive effect on the grid size for the 12 hour.
I'll have Bathurst 12 hour all day. Lewis or Charles to win 3 GPs in 2025?
Yeah, it's tough to say after the weekend because Lewis looked pretty sharp, up until the race itself.
That's what
and
made
then
me think about this. I thought, oh, here we go.
I think it's closer between them than maybe a lot of people expected. I think a lot of people thought it Charles' team, and he'd and already in the second weekend we had 2 days of Lewis looking like the faster Ferrari, quite comfortably. It wasn't until the Sunday where Charles kind of
wiped the wing off.
Yeah, wiped the wing off, and suddenly the thing came alive on him.
No downforce. That's what you need around here. Zero.
He was looking pretty good. So I actually really don't know here. I don't. It's a very competitive battle between those two, I reckon.
Yeah, I don't know that either will win 3.
Yeah, that's probably 3, maybe. 3 maybe a stretch.
I'll back Charles, even though I'm pretty impressed with the way Lewis has started.
Yeah.
What about this? Because I tell you, this is starting to get interesting. SVG wins on an oval, or Scotty Mac wins the IndyCar title?
I'm going to give Scotty the vote just because I like the cut of his jib after the weekend. He's riding high on Scotty Mac at the moment.
Sure I can't put that joke in there?
No, I'm very sure.
Yeah, I'll back Scotty Mac as well. I'm not. I tell you what, I'm a little bit worried about SVG. He hasn't looked, either that team's no good or he's a little bit lost. I'm going to go with the team, to be honest. What about this? Max gets to Miami, which is round 6, or Thomas Randall gets to Bathurst, round 10, without a race win?
I'll go with... I think Max is going to win a race sooner rather than later. I think Max will win one of the first 6 races of the year.
I've got a gut feeling that he's going to go deep into the season before his first win.
Max? Yeah, I don't know. No, I think he just knows how to get... With any of these F1 races now, like if you can just get to the front of the field, you can win the race. And he can drag some speed out of that thing over a lap.
He was unbelievable on the weekend. Honest to God. That's
definitely
the best fourth you could ever watch.
Yeah, and they probably went a bit conservative in the first stint, thinking the tyre wear was going to be a lot
Right?
worse. Like they could have easily been on the podium, which is pretty impressive. And particularly even if you look at that sprint qualifying where you saw both McLaren drivers mess it up, and then Lewis obviously executed because he's just good at what he does, and then Max executed, and Lewis beat him, but you just feel like he was outperforming that car by so much more. Like Lewis is probably still learning a bit about what's a pretty good Ferrari package, and Max is just absolutely dragging this bucket of bolts towards the front, So, yeah, I think Max had a fantastic weekend. I think the issue that Tommy Randall's got is that on the days that the Tickford Mustangs are up and about, he's got to beat his teammate, which is a pretty hard thing to do. So I think that's where maybe I think Tommy's going to win a race this year. I think once he wins one, it'll do wonders for his confidence, and he'll win many more. But I feel like Max is going to win before he does, just because if it's there for Max, he'll win it, and if it's there for Tommy, he's got to beat that black and green thing that is pretty well driven by Cam Waters.
I think Thomas will definitely win a race before Bathurst. I'm not sure whether Max is going to win anything in the first round, six rounds.
Actually, now I think about it, like Tommy Randall's going to win that enduro at the bend by about 5 laps because he's an absolute bend specialist, and that is before Bathurst. So that you can just pencil that one in straight away because that bloke is rapid at the bend. So him and James Moffat will be sitting pretty for that one, I reckon.
All right, let's go to a break, and we'll come back with rear of grid, including some interesting Creditor shreddits. See you in a tick.
Full Creditor noise.
If you're out there forklifting, bobcatting, jackhammering, backhoeing, trenching, digging, drilling, and persuading, you want to know that if anyone is thieving your stuff, that your insurance company will be timely with approving. So get on to Truck Assist, the insurance to keep on earning, with cover for the machines you're hauling and your work truck too. Go to truckassist.com.au, then get back to all that persuading. Limits and exclusions apply. Consider the PDS and TMD on the Truck Assist website.
All right, welcome back to Rear of Grid. Let's start with some Creditor shreddits. I'm going to make a statement, and we're both going to decide whether we're all in or all off with a credit or a shreddit. What about this? Number one, tractor towns are already losing their luster.
Shreddit.
Shreddit. TCRs will be replaced as a support category at the Perth Supercars round.
Ooh. I don't know.
Credit. The biggest poison chalice in motorsport is the second Red Bull F1 seat.
Credit.
Oscar Piastri needs to win 2 more GPs in the next 4 to ensure he's given fair treatment at McLaren.
Shreddit.
Supercars should trial a round where drivers can talk to other drivers during a race.
Oh, credit for sure.
I would love this. Credit. F1 drivers who made a killing from the dramatised Netflix series Drive to Survive can't get upset at the TV editors playing selective radio calls that create controversy on live TV.
Shred it.
Credit. All right, let's go back. Tractor Towns, we're still good with them?
Yeah, look, I think it's easy to think they're losing their luster from a distance, and they probably do in terms of, when there's an announcement that they're going to do one at X race or whatever. It's not like, oh, cool. It's like, okay, well, that's, it's not shiny and new anymore, but there's still an incredible way to engage people with the sport. Yeah. So when you're actually on the ground, I don't think there's still a wonderful thing for the category to do, and they should become a very permanent fixture of every event where it's possible to do it.
I'd love to see a tractor town from the Bend to Adelaide.
Yeah, that would be good.
There'd actually be pit stops in the middle of it. TCRs to be replaced as a support category at the Perth Supercars round. She says there's been some drivers leave that series that have been stalwarts. A couple of them have just packed up, and a couple of them have head to TCR. To Trans Am.
Yeah, so, I don't know anything about any replacements or anything, but there's obviously some issues for that category that, and I don't think we've heard the last of changes to things as they try and get something going for this season. But I don't actually know anything specific. The
biggest poison chalice in motorsport is the second Red Bull F1 seat. We both said credit. Let me ask you this: you're the manager of, I don't know, Colapinto, and the seat's offered to him. Do you tell him to take it?
Yeah, he's still got to take it, I think. But yeah, it's just tough. It's a tough place to go. Yeah,
I don't feel like it's a great work environment either. Just quietly, when you got Helmet running around, just pot shotting anytime he can. Oscar Piastri needs 2 more GPs in the next 4 to ensure he's given fair treatment. It wouldn't hurt.
No, I think I don't think there's any issues with favouritism there. I think Oscar is very well liked in that McLaren setup and doesn't need to worry about equal treatment as long as he's getting the job done. I mean, in a way, I guess there's credit to it in terms of like the more you win, the better position you put yourself in the championship, and the less likely it is that some of the 50-50 things are going to start going the other way. But I think generally, the team will just side with whoever is getting the job done. I don't actually put much in the whole that there's going to be favouritism to the British driver because it's a British team or England-based team or anything like that. I think Oscar is very liked and respected in that setup.
What about this? Supercars should trial a round where drivers can talk to other drivers during a race. How great would that be?
So how does it work? Like, is there like 23 buttons on the steering wheel and you just press whatever one you want, or is it just an open line frenzy? Like
maybe you just say to your engine, or maybe it's like what was that? What did they do during COVID? Those sim races?
Yeah, it's just
where they can all talk
line
to each other. Yeah,
maybe that's the way to, or like a switchboard thing where you go to your engineer. Is that where you were going with?
That's right.
Can you plug me into?
Call me into
James
Will
Golding.
Brown.
I've got something to send his way.
What would you say if you were Will Brown? What would you say to someone like, I don't know, Brody? Stop flashing your lights like you keep doing. I know they tried that already.
Yeah.
Or maybe I've got some good lines, but I don't think that they're suitable for this podcast. And finally, F1 drivers have made a killing from the dramatised Netflix series Drive to Survive. They can't get upset at the TV editors playing selective radio calls that create controversy.
I think they still can. Like, I think Fred Vasseur had a pretty good point about how Ferrari was done pretty dirty by FOM when they omitted their first radio message on Sunday, which was Lewis Hamilton offering to move over for Charles. Mm-hmm. And by taking that out, it changed the whole context of the rest of the conversation because it really sounded like Lewis was whinging about it when it was his idea and it was more about how to execute it right. So if you're looking at it through the lens of, this guy's actually said, hey, I'm nowhere near quick enough here. He looks pretty fast. Let's get him ahead of me and give him a fair crack at this. You take that out of it and it's a completely different conversation. So I think there is...
Yes, I don't mind it as long as they correct it.
But they didn't correct it. They didn't. It took Vasseur to come out and say,
now know.
Yeah, it took him to come out and say, hey, like this was really unfair because it painted a completely false picture of what was going on. So, and that's what you always have to. And even when you hear people talking about so and so whinges more on the radio than so and so, and I know there's other journalists and people always talk about this. He just whinges on the radio. You only know what the TV is telling you.
Correct.
Like, Oscar may be the biggest radio whinger in the world.
Don't think so, but
we would probably know it at some point because FOM would be like, this is amazing, let's get this out there. But you actually don't know. Unless you are sitting there scanning the radios and listening to everything, you're only hearing what you're told. So it is a real grey area to read too much into a driver's personality or their personality as a athlete or whatever based on the radio because you are just hearing very small snippets of what's going on out there.
Okay, Oscar, that's first. Well done. Thanks very much, everyone. Okay, Oscar, that's 12th place. Good drive today, mate. Best. Thanks very much, everyone. Okay, Oscar, that's the Powerball and all 6 numbers. You've just picked up 45 minutes. Thanks very much, everyone.
Do you reckon he just absolutely cuts sick behind closed doors? Like once the party starts, he's just...
I was going to put something on Twitter yesterday after he won, but it was very niche. But I was going to say, his missus is going to get a big cuddle when she gets home because that's what he said when he won his first Grand Prix. I thought, no one's going to get that. But anyway, this fan letter of the week comes from Justin Pennyfather on Facebook. Pennyfather. Is Red Bull F1 the new Repsol Honda team? Some very similar parallels going on. No one else has been able to drive the car the last couple of years. Now Verstappen is starting to struggle a bit. If Max decides he's had enough and jumps ship like Marquez did, they will be left absolutely nowhere, the same as what happened to Honda. What do you think?
It's an interesting comparison. And yeah, that is the real flight risk of Max at the moment, is that he is the only one who can get any performance out of that car. So if he did take off to go to Aston Martin or just decide that he's had enough of being a Formula One driver and he wants to just sit on his simulator for the rest of his life, that team would be in a fair bit of strife because you've got, pretty well proven drivers. Not so much, obviously Lawson's got a bit of proving to do, but Sergio Perez is a multiple Grand Prix winner who just really struggled there. So yeah, look, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the fact that Max is supremely talented and can just do things in a car that others can't. And when you have a drive like that, the development gets pushed into whatever direction it is that works for them. And it seems that the car is now just an oversteering mess that only Max can drive. And we've seen it all before. It's not dissimilar to what happened at DJR in the McLaughlin era and how Fabian Coulthard really struggled so much. Like Scott thrived with this knife edge car that was tricky to drive but really fast. and it didn't quite work for Fabs' style. But when the bloke on the other side of the garage is winning titles and races and poles, like it's a pretty hard to make a case for saying, hey, I think we're on the wrong setup path here. I think there's an issue with the car, and the team's going, well, like that guy's over there like holding 5 trophies. Like there can't be anything too wrong with the car. So you just end up in this really tricky situation, and it seems like that's collectively what's happened on that side of the Red Bull garage now. But it is an interesting point, and it does leave the team a bit exposed if Max decides to go and do something else with his life.
Do you know what I reckon was the cleverest thing to come out of the Chinese Grand Prix on the weekend?
What was that?
Zach Brown on Friday threw out to the media that he believes that Max has been courted by Mercedes. And then he walked away, dropped the mic and said, leave us with it. Brilliant, because first of all, it puts Mercedes in a conundrum about, well, who's going to be dropped if Max happens to come over here? So all of a sudden, George is like, wait up, what's going on? And then Red Bull were like, hang on, we're not losing Max. We're going to hang on to Max. So Zach Brown, he's closest to rivals, maybe outside of Ferrari, I guess. He's put him into a little bit of a tailspin about, no, that's not true. That's not true. So I thought, well played, Zach Brown. I'm pretty sure he knew what he was doing when he actually did that.
Oh, yeah, I think so. But that doesn't happen by accident.
No. All right, mate. That'll about do us for this episode of Full Credit to the Noise. Don't forget you can find this show on all the socials at FCTTN Podcast, and you can read AVL's excellent work over at speedcafe.com, where they break all the big motorsport news first. Until next time, I've been former legend. He's been AVL. This has been Full Credit to the Noise. We'll see you at Red Bull headquarters.
See you there.
Full credit to the noise.